Hello and welcome to the Empire in London's Leicester Square for the royal premiere of Steven Spielberg's 1993 blockbuster movie Jurassic Park. Now, they had promised me a limousine for tonight, and this is what turned up, but they assure me it's dinosaur-proof. Shall we go, boys?
It was 1993. Jurassic Park had recently come out of the cinema, and despite the fact that I loved Arnie and I really wanted Last Action Hero to be the big hit of that summer, the hype eventually got the better of me. I went to see it at the pictures, and soon my feeble little child mind found itself in the full grip of dino fever. As we rolled into August, I learned that there was a Jurassic Park game on the Sega Mega Drive, and I very much wanted to play it.
Imagine you wake up in Jurassic Park and you're a raptor. You have sharp teeth and 7-inch claws, and since you've been extinct for 65 million years, you'd be in a really bad mood.
A few days shy of my 9th birthday, my mum rolled up outside my primary school in our little D-Reg Vauxhall Astra. I climbed into the vehicle and saw a large plastic bag on the back seat. I peered inside and saw a Sega Mega Drive console with this very box art and studied one of the included games. The Revenge of Shinobi, Streets of Rage and Golden Axe. Mega Games 2. Now, this event is all very much through the mists of time for me, but I will never forget how these games made me feel at the time, and how much they stirred my little imagination. 3 absolute stone-cold classics in one package. In my opinion, it's still the coolest game compilation of all time. Now, before I go any further, I should acknowledge that you can of course get a number of compilations including all 3 of these very games, plus many, many more. So how could I possibly call this the greatest compilation ever? Well, try and look at it in context. Sega Mega Games 2 came out when the Mega Drive was arguably at the absolute height of its powers. These 3 games were early-ish releases for the console, but they were still absolutely 3 big guns in the Mega Drive canon, and to put all 3 of them in the same package? Magical stuff. In the PS2 era, you had things like the Silent Hill Collection, for example, 3 amazing and very prominent games developed specifically for that console, all in the same box. But these were 3 very specific titles, all within the same series, of course, completely awesome if you love Silent Hill games. But Mega Games 2, on the other hand, had an excellent arcade smash hit conversion, one of the hottest beat-em-ups ever created, and arguably the most legendary ninja game of all time. All crammed into its bomb-proof clamshell box, complete with 3 full-size manuals that actually prevent you from closing it. Incredible stuff. These 3 games were truly AAA titles of their day. To use a probably completely inadequate analogy, it's a bit like getting Horizon Forbidden West, Returnal and The Last of Us 2 all in the same package. For 40 quid. Anyway, enough rambling. On my birthday I set the Mega Drive up in my bedroom using the included RF adapter, plugged it into my Goldfish Bowl CRT complete with walnut veneer, even at the time it was a fucking ancient hand-me-down, flicked the Mega Power Switch, and I heard the opening notes of what is undoubtedly the finest techno soundtrack of any video game ever. violence, the beats, the, for the time, highly cinematic presentation. The music and gameplay married up perfectly. The solid house beats and the visceral yet rhythmic action created a compulsive sense of momentum that just cannot be beaten. The colour palette is quintessentially Mega Drive. Back in those days, you could just tell by watching a few seconds of gameplay and listening to the quality of the sound which console the game was running on. We're not talking about the laughably minute differences between versions of a game that you can get nowadays. Back then, each console was a bespoke piece of hardware. It would have its own distinct colour palette, and it would have its own unique sound. The SNES with its pastel tones and sample-based music, and the Mega Drive with its raw, punchy synths and beats, and dark, gritty hues and pops of luminous colour. The recent rash of beat-em-ups, some of which are very good, have only illustrated how tricky it really is to make a truly great belt-scrolling beat-em-up, and how brilliant the Streets of Rage games are. In gameplay terms, the sequel was a pretty major jump up, but this original game still holds up, in my opinion. The impact of the blows give you that indescribable, incredibly satisfying kick that immediately makes you want to smash someone else in the face, and the collision detection, little nuances in the moveset, and the special move, of course, all combine to make this a super fun and compelling video game to this day. Yuzo Koshiro worked miracles with the Yamaha YM2612 in this game. Picking between the soundtracks of the original three is almost impossible, in my opinion. Everyone hates the third one, but I think it's a pretty amazing piece of work, even if I wouldn't want to listen to it while I'm in the bath. But if I had to pick one and just sit down and listen to it purely for enjoyment, it would probably be this original title. For a 9-year-old me, the game was tough, and when I invited my little friend Callum from across the street to play it with me, it was usually touch and go whether we'd managed to complete it or not. And therein lay the thrill of a great co-op game. Are there any finer cooperative games than belt-scrolling beat-em-ups? Before you correct me, that's what they've always been called in the UK. I think not. Nothing beats picking up a couple of controllers and blasting your way through one of these things. There's so much fun, in fact, that I've even roped the missus into playing them. We've completed all three, the Streets of Rages, and also all three Mega Drive Golden Axes. She actually finished Golden Axe 3 on her own, believe it or not, after it had made me almost rip my own eyebrows off in rage. So, well done to her. In fact, me and my mate Callum loved this game so much that I'm almost embarrassed to say we used to dress up and act out little Streets of Rage plays for our very generous and probably intensely bored parents out in the back garden, complete with bandana, white vest, and even whiter, skinny little milk bottle child arms. Yes, I was always Axel. Anyway, I just thought I'd put that out there. Now at this point I'm going to show you what is a very important part of this Mega Drive gaming era for me. This is issue 1 of the UK Sonic the Comic magazine, complete with its little sheet of stickers. I remember really quite clearly getting this issue at 9 years old, I believe. Although unfortunately this isn't my original copy, I got this off eBay about 10 years or so ago. Anyway, this magazine really piqued my imagination back then with its cool comic strips of all 3 of These Are Here games. I also swear to God that I had some kind of Streets of Rage novel that came mounted to a Sega magazine of some description in and around 93 and 94ish. I think it was based on Streets of Rage 2. If anyone remembers this, please answers on a postcard. Anyway, I'm waffling again. Streets of Rage was a big deal back then and I was completely swept away with it. To this day, I'm still in love with the pixel art in this game. Particularly little touches like how you can see the sun beginning to come up in the final stage here. The passage of time from night through to the morning is one of those little touches of genius in this game. I mean, can't you just feel a whole world going on outside that window there? Sorry, I'm getting my Sega classics mixed up there. Despite the many tough bosses, we all know who the real big bad in this game is. It's those little gingerhead cunts littered throughout the game who come sprinting up to you and throw a jab faster than Manny Pacquiao straight in the back of your head. In an average playthrough, those little shitbags take more energy away from me than almost any other character in the game. After you've beaten Mr. X, you get the ending, which is just magnificent. Listen to those FM ocean waves lapping against the virtual shore. Goosebumps, man. The format of this game, along with Golden Axe to a slightly lesser extent, is for all intents and purposes perfect as far as I'm concerned, and so radically different from the sort of flow and structure of today's mainstream games that it's almost a different medium altogether in some ways. Streets of Rage lasts for about 45 minutes or thereabouts. In that short space of time you get a real sense of having been on a journey with these guys. It leaves you with the impression of having watched a good movie. And like a good movie, an experience that you want to enjoy again and again. A little concentrated burst of adrenaline, reflexes and endurance from the player leads to a great sense of satisfaction and relief when you finally batter the bad guy. It's the perfect length, the perfect level of challenge, and the perfect soundtrack. It was a formula perfected by Streets of Rage, only bettered, arguably, by its own sequel. This game is absolutely legendary, and if you haven't tried it, you absolutely should.
So, you slaughtered the son of Death Adder, barbecued his freaks. How do you progress to level 8? Well, you eat fast food, you humiliate every machine in the arcade, and you and you practice for real. That's my sidekick. Game over, sunshine.
Golden Axe. This is probably the weakest game of the three, but that ain't saying much. Golden Axe was, as you can see, a Conan the Barbarian inspired fantasy belt-scrolling beat-em-up, and it rocks. It had been a smash hit in the arcades and had seen ports to basically every system going, but this conversion absolutely smoked the competition. It's very close, in fact, to the arcade version, making good on Sega's promise to bring the arcade home with its new Mega Drive console. The biggest difference is in the limited colour palette of the Mega Drive. I think the tones of the arcade original are quite a bit more organic and cool looking. Also, there are some changes to the, can we say, physics model? There was a slightly different weight to it anyway. And finally, the Mega Drive includes an extra bit after you rescue the famous Upside Down King. The music. The music. Well, just listen. All three of these games, by the way, have absolutely classic soundtracks. So why is Golden Axe the weakest of the three? Well, in short, it's a little bit scrappy and buggy compared to the other games. You can trick the AI into falling off cliffs, and the collision detection always felt a little bit hit and miss to me. It's just a slightly less refined game overall. Again, that really isn't saying much. This game is a classic. I think the thing that really piqued my imagination back in the day was the world of Golden Axe itself. Yes, it was a Conan ripoff, but gosh darn it, I wanted to be in the world of Golden Axe as a kid, mooching around through its sweeping vistas, walking over giant eagles' backs and trying unsuccessfully to slaughter innocent but very irritating civilians. Again, this game supports 2 players and that's the best way to play it in my opinion. It's almost as fun as Streets of Rage, if not quite as finely tuned, and when that giant axe finally falls onto that big teal bastard in the flamingo pink armour, there is nary a feeling like it.
SFX ゴールデンアーク忍者ゲームのニューウェーブザ・スーパーシノビ堂々完成セガRevenge of Shinobi.
This iconic video game is absolutely awesome, of course, but it's also by far the most challenging of the three, and in fact I have to admit I didn't actually complete it until about 10 years ago, when I began to get back into retro stuff and made a concerted effort to blaze through it one evening on an ancient CRT that my landlord had kindly decided not to remove from a dusty old nook in the corner of my bedsit. Thank you very much, Dave. Well, what can I say about this one? Soundtrack. Yuzo Koshiro strikes again. Yeah, I'm definitely a little less familiar with this one because I always found it quite daunting as a kid, and I always got completely lost in that bastard labyrinth level, which was still a pain in the arse to complete 20 years later, at age 29, and with the awesome power of a smartphone, game FAQs, and a bottle of Buckfast by my side. There is a great variety to the levels here, and it gives a great impression again of taking us on a real global journey, aided by some inspired art design. Just look at some of these bosses, for example. The gameplay is extremely tight and it's a tricky but fair game, with the possible exception of that fucking labyrinth. I don't really like tricksy platformers as much as I do belt-scrolling beat-em-ups, but that's just my personal preference. When I take a step back, I can see that this game is superior to at least Golden Axe. Moreover, the style of this game is just irresistible. The visuals and the music just speak for themselves. Leaping from Commodore 64's Amstrad Spectrums and Master Systems to the kind of aesthetic sophistication you see in games like this just felt like a quantum leap back in the very late 80s. I'm projecting a bit there because I didn't get a Mega Drive until 1993, but the point still stands, I think. When I finally saw the end screen here, I was battered, bruised, and yet blissfully happy to have finally scratched that 20-year-old itch. So, there we have it. As well as being fantastic games in their own right, these titles really played a huge part in my enduring fascination with video games, for better or worse. I don't know whether to worship them or set them on fire for that really, but either way, I just can't help loving them. Their images and music are forever scored onto my great big floppy old brain, and I've absolutely no doubt that they'll remain there until it eventually comes leaking out of my ears one day, and for that, I am thankful.